Hi, everyone. Welcome to Fear Assembly. I'll be your host today, Cole Harper, joined by Cody Leach, as well as Bryan Starr. Bryan, do you want to tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, pretty much all platforms at B Star Cinema, and super excited today. Great couple of horror films to talk about today. So yeah, pumped.
Yep. And you guys can find me just by searching my name. So on YouTube, you just type in Cody Leach. I should be the first several thousand results. And then on TikTok, I go by Cody Leach Reviews, and pretty much everywhere else. And even on YouTube, if you search this, it'll pop up just Cody Leach YT for YouTube, like one whole name. You can find all my stuff.
Excellent. Well, obviously, we need to talk about the two great films that are entering the zeitgeist and still probably in the zeitgeist by the time this comes out. It's
The
Obsession.
Mandalorian and Grogu.
Yes. Obsession, as well as Backrooms. So before I even say more, I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on everything that's happening in the horror industry, especially with those two films?
I mean, it's amazing to see.
Yeah,
For one, just independent, or at least mostly independent. I think people are debating Backrooms because A24 is getting pretty big. But regardless, smaller budget, not quite so Hollywood studio produced films, just shattering records 2 weeks after each other. One of them just like, I think Obsession just broke a record. It's like 42 years old since like E.T., the first film to have a third week jump in box office since E.T., which is insane. And then Backrooms, I believe, having the biggest opening for an independent film or something along those lines. And of course, the exciting part of it too is like it's YouTubers turned filmmakers. You know, I have aspirations to one day do something like that, and it's really, really cool and exciting and inspiring to see like over the last year, just how many doors are just being just blown open for people like us that you know, have started our careers doing things like this and maybe have a creative desire to do something, and it doesn't feel like that's a dream anymore. It feels like as long as you just knuckle down and do it,
Mhm.
there's a door you can walk through now.
yeah. I joined YouTube in 2006, and it was August, and they went public, I think, in September. So I was like boots on the ground. And it's just because I wanted a place to put my little short films that I made, by myself with my friends.
Mhm.
And there it is. And to think that back then I thought to myself, the only way to get into the industry is I have to go somewhere else. And it has to be California. Like, that's like, that's my little young boy thinking, right? But to think that like, just keep putting stuff out on this platform that I've been a part of for so long could be seen and could get to California, to get to Hollywood, to get into theaters. That's crazy to me. And yeah, I mean, it's been a couple of years of just big names, big titles, big stories coming mostly, from YouTube. And that's awesome. I love that.
I'll tell you the exciting thing about Obsession too, which is cool for me, is that, you know, a lot of time I go to Fantastic Fest every single year. I started going to South by Southwest the last 2 years. And I always have a little bit of an anxiety
Mhm.
whenever I walk out really hyped and buzzing about a certain film that I get to see that's going to be like months down the road before the public gets to see it. Because I know that there's a lot of really exciting circumstances surrounding these film festivals. I mean, you're in the same room with the director and the cast sometimes. Sometimes they have a really cool intro. You're surrounded by some of the most passionate and lively fans to watch a movie with in the theater. Like, it's among the best theater experiences you're going to have. And so I always kind of have like this hesitation. I'm like, this was like a 5 out of 5 experience for me, but I don't know if I want to say that because I know that the person in, you know, a random town in the US that's going to have 6 other people in their theater with them is not going to have the same experience as me.
Right.
And I walked out just insanely glowing about Obsession last year, and I've been hyping it up ever since. And I always expect by the time that it actually drops, I'm going to get tons of comments and DMs like, dude, you overhyped the hell out of this. It was good, but come on. And Obsession has been nuts, where I don't think in 10 years on YouTube I've ever had so many tags and DMs and posts where people are just reaching out to me going, thank God you put this on my radar. And as high as you were on it, you undersold it. And I'm like, great. I'm so
Yeah.
glad everybody's having a good time with it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And as we get into these two films before we move on to other topics, just so our listeners know, we won't have any spoilers today. So if you've not seen these films yet, which you need to see both, don't worry. We're just going to kind of talk about the impact on the industry and just have a general conversation. So, Cody, as far as Obsession goes, which I finally got to see after putting my kids to sleep with the wife on a random Monday. I went out and watched like a 10 p.m. screening,
Mhm.
and the auditorium was still like half full. It was mainly
Oh,
like
yeah.
teenagers, people in their young 20s, and then I'm the old guy in row 3 with my bucket of popcorn. But it's just a great experience to see a great movie in a room full of people. And I
Yeah.
think with horror, it is one of those unique experiences. It's why many of us still gravitate to it, right? Whether we're watching at home or in theaters. But Obsession is one where there's many scenes where you're kind of like looking away from the screen for a second to see the other audience reactions. So, did you outside of South by, did you see it in just a regular commercial screening, or was South by the only exposure you had to it?
Yeah, it was Fantastic Fest that I saw the
Fantastic.
premiere at. I
Sorry.
think it was the second time it was ever shown. I think it premiered at TIFF, and then Focus Features dropped that pile of money on it, and then it was at Fantastic Fest after that it broke, so everybody was just buzzing about it. It was literally the only movie that was hard to get into that year. Luckily, our mutual friend Chuck got me in. Thank God for Chuck. And then, yeah, I went opening night. I couldn't wait to see it again. I always want to see the audience reaction to certain movies like that. And when I knew it was going to be special, and luckily, I don't have too many of these bad experiences anymore, but we all have a growing issue with people being on their phones during movies and just not being locked in, treating the theater like their own living room. And I typically don't watch trailers, so I have my phone out up until the point where you start to see like the movie studios and everything right before the movie's starting. And I'm telling you, the moment that the trailers ended and my phone was still on, the guy behind me is like, "Hey, can you put your phone away?" And I was like, "Absolutely, I can. Yes, they're locked the fuck in. This is great." And so, yeah, it was cool. There was certain scenes in the movie I knew were coming. And so you kind of do that thing where you're like looking in your peripherals, waiting for everybody to react. And it didn't disappoint. It was awesome.
Excellent. Bryan, I assume you've seen this already as well. Did you see it
Yeah.
in your local theater, or what was your experience?
I saw it at South by, and it was my first time seeing it. And Focus reached out to see if I wanted to interview Curry at South by, and I get really scared easily. We've talked about this before. I get scared very easily, but I love it. But it's a mixed bag. So I was hoping to get a screener so that I didn't have to look like an absolute wimp in this showing at South by. But two, I really look up to Curry. I've been following him for a couple years. I really wanted to be prepared for that interview, and so watching it early would help with like the questions that I want to ask. I did not get special treatment. I had to go to that screening at South by, and yeah, I mean it was insane. It was absolutely electric. The entire theater, we were all kind of like groaning and cringing and laughing together at the appropriate times, and it was an absolute blast. And then I got to interview Curry the next morning, which was also just a ton of fun as well. So yeah, it means a lot to me for sure. But I did not go see it in theaters. Again, it got me good. It got me good. I didn't really want to experience that again in the privacy of my own home. Perfect, but yeah.
I could tell the movie is creating a ton of word of mouth and buzz, even if I didn't know what the box office numbers was, because my wife came to me and asked me about it, which is an extreme rarity. Even though I live in this world every single day, like she really is only familiar with horror films that come out if I like put it in front of her. And just a couple of days ago, she's like, "So what's up with this Obsession thing? I keep hearing about it." And I was like, "Oh, we'll find a time. We'll find a time, woman. We'll go check it out again."
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And it's a great psychological thriller too. I mean, that's why I think it's really resonated, is that it works even without the scary moments, which I was personally slightly disappointed by. I thought that there were several moments where they could have taken it a certain direction, and they either went super weird or super graphic or anything in between. But all of those creative decisions in what it is in its totality, it's still a great movie. So for anybody listening that's on the fence, do I go see it in theaters? Do I wait for this to hit streaming or, whatever else? Like, you got to go see this thing in theaters. You got to celebrate a film like this, and see it in a room full of people. Have you guys seen Backrooms in theaters?
Yeah, I did.
Backrooms, yeah.
I saw
Let's
it
talk
opening
about
night. It was one that I really didn't know much about. I'm really not tied into creepypasta culture or anything like that. Like, even when Slender Man came out, I was like, what is this? And so that's a total, I guess that'd be called like a Gen Z type thing. And I'm just outside of that in my generation. So it's one that really, it was just the buzz of another YouTuber turned filmmaker, which of course I'm excited about seeing another one of those. and I hadn't seen the trailer, but I've seen like the images of, yellow walls and somebody's pressed against it. And I'm like, what is this? And so I saw it opening night. It wasn't quite as packed as Obsession, but still had a lot of people there, which is always cool to see. It's not often in my local theater that I get that, unless it's like an Avengers film or something like that. So anytime it's even a third of the way full, I'm like, ooh, this is cool. And it was interesting. It's not exactly my type of film, to be honest with you. It's a movie that I would say I appreciated more than I enjoyed. Like, I was really fascinated with the set design, with the cinematography, the way that they actually like visualized the back rooms. I would watch a 2-hour documentary on how they made the film in a heartbeat. Even the way that they kind of had like this labyrinth effect where it's like the same kind of room over and over, but just slightly off and different, and the way that they constructed, like even that scene where they walk in, all of a sudden the ceiling's like another room with doors. And I just want to know how they built that and what went into all of that. And great central performance with Chiwetel Ejiofor, and definitely some eerie moments. I could feel a very different type of response emotionally when he's like walking through the rooms, and like even just like, subconsciously, I'm like keeping track. I'm like, okay, you turned left, you turned right, like trying to keep some kind of a map so you can get back out, which is really cool. It's just not a very story and character driven film. And that's really what I go to movies for first. I used an analogy in my review that Backrooms to me is like if somebody served you a really well-made pizza that didn't have any sauce on it. And that's my favorite part of the pizza. So even if the cheese and the meat and the dough is on point, I'm like, man, could have used some sauce on this. And so I dug it overall. I can totally recommend it to certain types of horror fans. I just wish there was a little bit more to chew on narratively with it.
Yep. That's why I always get the extra sauce on Domino's.com.
Same.
And then have the wife yell at me.
So plug for Domino's.
There you go. Today's sponsor.
Yes, exactly. Bryan, what was your experience with Backrooms?
I loved it. I have watched Kane since the first video came out 4 years ago. So not only have I watched that series, which is about 22 videos on YouTube, as they came out, but the week leading up to the movie, I rewatched all of it, which is, I need to look this up because I keep bringing this up, but I mean, 2 to 3 hours of your time, I think. So not much at all. Yeah. I was
going to ask because I just started watching them all, and it's kind of hard, especially on YouTube, to find everything because obviously YouTube's also trying to serve you other videos similar to it. But, the first one, it says like found footage 1, and then you're looking up like found footage 2, and then it says like test 2, and then it says like extra, and then there's like a pools related thing. So what, like for our listeners, like, do you feel like that's important to check out going in? Do you think that you can just go into the movie blind without any context to these YouTube videos? What do you think is the optimal way to experience this film?
Yeah, I think it can totally stand on its own, but I think that it's maybe lacking what people are looking for in terms of what's happening outside of the backrooms. And the nice thing about the series is that the series is like 85% what's happening outside of the backrooms. When it comes to that kind of POV, VHS look, high-8 tape look, there's only like 3 in the entire series on YouTube. The rest is all about how it was founded and who discovered it. And there's one episode just on the lights that are in the backrooms. They tore it down and they pick it apart, and they talk about the light itself, which is like some of the most boring content you can think of. Yet I'm watching the entire thing because of just how well the story is being told. So I think it can stand on its own, but I think if you really want to dive in more and learn more, especially when it comes to anything Mark Duplass is up to, it's all there. And the nice thing is, if you go to Kane Pixels on YouTube, there is a playlist, so you just press play. You don't have to search anything. Watch it in order, because even the way that he put it out is very entertaining. There's a lot of moments where I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's from this is from that. And again, he's a kid in the grand scheme of things. He's a kid making this, and he's a kid designing it as well, mostly in Blender, including the movie itself, where there's moments in the movie that are strictly straight from Blender, not filmed on set, and it was Kane that put in probably 95% of the work, which is just unreal.
What does filmed in Blender mean?
Yeah, Blender is basically where the sets are created in a platform on your computer. So it's all digital. And so the backrooms themselves were all digital for those found footage. There's 3 found footage clips on the YouTube series, and that's just it's all Blender. It's all fake, essentially. It's not a set like they did for the movie, which is just amazing that they pulled that off, because it's one thing to see, a digital version that a kid made in his bedroom. It's another to see where most of this budget went into an actual practical set. For the most part, there's scenes where, for instance, looking up at the ceiling and it's another hallway, that's Blender, whereas the set that he was standing in was practical. And so it's little things like that, and then because of the camera that they're using, it works. It totally, you can't tell sometimes, and it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I imagine if he was working on many of those videos before he went to sleep, he would actually have a dream of being in the backrooms. I don't know if that was one of your questions in the interview. I know for me that would certainly happen. If you guys had a dream where you were suddenly in the backrooms, would you just force yourself to wake up? Would you run through? What would you do?
Any kind of dream that puts me into a really like disturbing situation, I almost always jolt out of it. I never really feel locked into it. You know what I mean? So I think if I was having that, it'd be a short dream. And I'd be either up trying to watch something else, or I'd be like, okay, we got to go to like Target or something like that. Like, get out of the back rooms.
Right.
Yeah.
I would definitely be running really slow throughout the back rooms, I'm sure, and not getting to where I need to go.
Yeah, Ricky 666 on a previous podcast, he was saying that he watches a lot of like cartoons and kids programming and things like that before he goes to bed, because he watches a lot of disturbing stuff throughout the day and evening. So
that's funny.
So with that in mind, Obsession is certainly a psychological horror film. And not to go back to this film, but I wanted to also just make some recommendations to our audience here of some other great psychological horror films. So, Cody, I'll start with you. What would be some picks that you would give people that say, "Hey, I loved Obsession. What are some other good psychological horror films I should check out?"
Well, one that's pretty well known. It's one of the more celebrated ones for sure. That actually is one of the rare horror films that won an Oscar too. That has some thematic similarities to Obsession. Would be Misery. So the Rob Reiner film, rest in peace. You got James Caan, also rest in peace. And then you have one of my all-time favorite horror performances with Kathy Bates. And it's a Stephen King novel that, if you haven't seen it, it's basically about a psychotic fan, where this really prolific romance author ends up crashing in the mountains during like a snowstorm, and she's his biggest fan, tries like nursing him back to health, but you find out very quickly she's really just trying to lock him up so that she can keep him to herself. And when she finds out that he killed off her favorite character in his newest book, all hell breaks loose. It is just a phenomenal movie. I've never actually read the novel. I'm not a big reader, but one day I would like to. But it's 2 outstanding performances, and Kathy Bates, I mean, to this day, that might still be if I was to rank top 5 villainous horror performances, I would guarantee she's cracking the list. So that's a really, really good one that I love. I'm sure you guys feel the same. I've never met anybody that didn't like Misery.
Right. It's a classic for sure. I remember my parents watching that, and I walked into the living room and I was like, "What is this?" They're like, "No, don't see that." I think it was like 8 or 9 or something at the time, and they're like, "One day, you'll be able to check it out."
Yeah.
But...
Why is she holding a sledgehammer? Yeah, and then
go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, but yeah, one that's not as well known. Luckily, it feels like it's getting a little bit more well known. Whenever you dive into the horror community online, you get a lot of different opinions. So I don't know how it's not a mainstream film, but Session 9 is one that I always love to recommend to people. That it's got David Caruso and a few other actors that were kind of prominent more in the 90s, early 2000s. But it is a film that it's about a asbestos cleanup crew that gets tasked with cleaning up this abandoned asylum. And while they're there, things that are lingering inside of the asylum basically start to take hold. And the title gets its gets the name from, there's one of the characters that finds these 9 little reels of tapes of a like psychological investigation into one of these inmates, and it just gets progressively more disturbing with the sound design as you go through all 9 sessions. It is probably the most atmospheric horror film you've ever seen, to where right in the beginning of the film, as soon as they walk into the asylum and you just get this big shot of this open hallway with it, it's just completely decrepit, and there's this jacked up little rusted chair that clearly they strap somebody to way in the distance. Like, you can almost feel the cold air on your neck just by watching that scene. So it's one of my favorite films to recommend to people, because not too many people have heard of it, and it's one of the most effective horror films you're going to watch.
I agree. Yeah, if you haven't seen that one, check it out. Brian, what would be your recommendations?
Yeah, I have a few, and my thing is physical media, so I always got to show off the copies. They're both kind of, I actually don't know where they stand in terms of, do people know them? Have they heard of them? I imagine most horror fans have, but I don't know one over the other. So, but first I have The Invitation, which is a movie I saw on Netflix first. Hadn't heard anything about it. I don't know. I actually have no idea why I pressed play, but I'm so glad that I did. And I found a copy. This is from Draft House Films. I found a copy so that I could keep it and recommend it forever. But essentially, I mean, yeah, this guy, Logan Marshall Green, I believe is who it is. Yeah. Gets invited to dinner with his ex-wife and her new husband in the Hollywood Hills. And you would think that maybe it's going to be a little bit of an intimate moment of maybe like trying to bury the hatchet, or keep the relationship a little bit better than most divorces go through. And yet people keep showing up at the most random times, seemingly random people as well. And then slowly things just start getting revealed to be absolute nefarious reasons that as to why they're there. And there's an end shot in this movie that it still kind of haunts me. And even though this is fiction, like, part of me is like, I don't know about that. This could be real. And so yeah, there's just something about it. But what I really love is truly just not knowing what's real, what's honest, who's on whose side, and the entire time. And yeah, I really dig it. And then the other one I have is Unsane, which I really love because, one, I just love Steven Soderbergh. He, most famously, I would say, Ocean's 11, like, mainstream audience, everyone's going to know the Ocean's trilogy, but he does a lot of weird indie projects as well, and he does a lot. He does a lot of just kind of doing how he wants to do it.
Right.
And he kind of breaks some rules. And what I love about this one, the unique take that he has on this one, is that it's filmed entirely on an iPhone. And you can definitely tell, especially in the beginning when you're kind of getting used to it. But as the story goes, I think you just completely forget. And what I love about that is you can put iPhones anywhere, and versus the bigger cameras that are typically used. And so he's doing some weird stuff. He's doing weird stuff with angles. But the story itself is kind of my nightmare. The story of what would happen if you get locked up in an insane asylum because everyone thinks that you're crazy and you're not. Or are you? I don't know. Right. And so that's kind of, I mean, this is like Gaslight the movie as well. There's a certain plot point with someone that she keeps seeing that is also just like so frustrating that she has to go through this. But truly, like, what I'm drawn to anytime something is made on a camera that I have access to. So I really like that one because of that. I don't think it's Soderbergh's strongest movie in his filmography, but I think everyone should give it a watch. Strictly just on the basis of it's filmed with an iPhone, but it's also pretty entertaining.
I think it was one of the first commercial releases that was filmed on an iPhone. I remember that
Mhm.
was like a big part of the marketing,
Right.
and that it was just unique in that sense beyond the story itself in Soderbergh. And with the invitation, I remember I loved the movie Coherence, which is
Yes. Yeah.
slightly more sci-fi, but
Right.
again another kind of contained film taking place over dinner, and you find out that there's sort of this worldwide event happening
Yeah.
that's impacting everybody. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
invitation is great. It's one of
Cool.
my favorites.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah.
Um, the ones that I would recommend, I'll keep my answer shorter so we can keep everything going. As far as well-known ones, I'm going to go with Long Legs. Obviously, the reveal of Nicolas Cage's character, in this, without revealing too much, elevates it by itself. But this is one of the creepiest films about a serial killer who has not been caught yet. There's a detective that is kind of pulling all the information together. She's a little bit closer, but when you think she's figured it out, she realizes, "Oh, wait, there's a whole other layer to this that I was not accounting for, and oh no, it's too late." So I'll leave it there. That was from Neon a couple years ago, and another one from Neon that I think is lesser known and definitely deserves to be seen is a movie called Possessor. This one's pretty crazy because it kind of involves conduits and kind of remote viewing and being able to move about in the world. And are there consequences as you're moving about the world? Who's in control of what body? Who are you talking to? So in that sense, it's a great psychological horror film. There's also, as a fun fact, I think an unrated version that I might have this wrong, but I believe it's only on Amazon in
Mm.
terms of the digital access to the unrated version. It's possible that you can find it in other places, but I remember hearing that there was the standard version that played in theaters and then the unrated super graphic version. So I had to check it out just to see what was different. And I would say if you like the graphic stuff at all, the unrated version is definitely the one that you should check out, especially if you like the Terrifiers and things like that. So, Possessor, Long Legs, guys, have any thoughts on those?
Yeah, I mean, Long Legs is really solid. What I enjoyed so much about that movie was its use of like negative space in the shot, where so much of it is framed, where you have like the character dead center in the middle, and your eyes are just constantly darting around, like something's gonna come out of that door, something's gonna pop out of that box. Like the movie always has you in that state of mind, even though throughout most of it nothing actually happens, but you never feel disarmed. And uh, I was mixed on Cage. I got to be honest. I think visually, in a lot of moments, he's really creepy. The moments where he goes full Cage don't completely work for me when he's singing and everything like that. I don't know. The people seem to love it or hate it. I'm kind of in the middle with it. I don't understand why it's getting a sequel. That just feels very odd to me. But nonetheless, I dig Long Legs. I think Osgood is certainly an exciting current horror filmmaker that has shown so far that he can do a lot of different things because none of his movies are similar so far. And then Possessor, it's funny you bring up the Blu-ray because it's one of those times where I almost got mad at the fact that they didn't like advertise it well enough because I had it on my radar specifically because it's Brandon Cronenberg. And I'm like, okay, let's see what, Cronenberg's kid can do. And I remember
Mhm.
I ordered the Blu-ray, and the day that the Blu-ray got here and it was the yellow cover, I got some kind of a notification or found somehow on social media that there's the violent unrated cut on
Mhm.
Amazon, which is a red cover. And I was like, "Gah!" And I was going to watch it that day. And so I had to pre-order, or I had to order the red one and wait for that one because I wanted to watch that one first. It's definitely a wild movie. Cronenberg, Brandon, I mean, both of them are weird, but Brandon Cronenberg specifically is really out there with both of his films that I've seen. This and the other one he did with Skarsgård that the title is escaping me, but definitely a violent, depraved type of movie Possessor is. So yeah, they're both solid.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So the other subgenre that we're going to talk about is one that I don't hear or read much about in the horror community, which is documentaries that are actually scary and potentially considered horror documentaries outright. So Brian, let's start with you. What would be your recommendations in that subgenre?
Yeah, I have documentaries that are kind of based on horror, not necessarily scary themselves, but I will throw out, just off the top of my head, maybe like one of the scariest documentaries I've ever seen.
Hmm.
And it's just strictly just because of my religious upbringing. But it's a movie called Jesus Camp. And it's not even supposed to be scary. I don't think it's just what's going on in this movie freaks me out. And you know, it's the whole thing of like, you know, teach them young and they'll be soldiers for Christ forever type of brainwashing. And like I said, I had a religious upbringing, so I didn't experience what these kids are experiencing, but there's definitely some tactics in there that I was just like, whoa, I mean, this is why people get in cults. And because, you know, they think that they're doing good or whatever. And yeah, so that's just one that I want to throw out there that is, I think, actually kind of scary. But I have two quick ones that are based around the genre itself. I brought this up last time we talked. And it is best worst movie from the kid who is in Troll 2. This is about Troll 2, and I just love the title. I also just love this cover as well. Green DVD case is amazing. But yeah, it's simply just about the phenomenon of Troll 2 and what it's turned into. I think they even interview the director, who's not a fan of what Troll 2 has become, because he played it straight. And it's not. It's goofy as all get out. But it's really cool to see the kid himself actually kind of take back his career and turn it into this. He's also directed another documentary about in-home haunted houses, which is a lot of fun. I'm blanking on the title, but I love that one. And then I'm actually friends with the director, Kira Gardner, for Living with Chucky, who grew up with Chucky as basically a brother because her dad, famous VFX artist Tony Gardner, did all the Chucky dolls after 3, I believe. But essentially, this is a look into the entire series, but also kind of her relationship with Chucky. Yeah, like I said, kind of as a brother, which is a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, Kira, this is all her. So it's really cool to see her pull this off. And just a fun watch too if you love this series. And famously for me, Child's Play 3 scarred me when I was a kid. Watching clips from that just freaked me out. So to return to the franchise and actually be a fan of it, it's a lot of fun. But yeah, I got those for you.
Love Chucky. Yeah,
Cody,
so
what would
Chucky,
be your choices?
It's going to be kind of a smooth transition because I'd never actually seen the documentary. I missed it. It played at the first Fantastic Fest I ever went to, the Living with Chucky. But Chucky and Freddy are my top 2 horror icons franchises. And I'm at a bit of a disadvantage with when it comes to documentaries because I haven't seen too many of them. So I really don't know whether these are well-known or hidden gems, but I'm just going to let my Freddy freak flag fly. So my well-known one that I think most fans of the franchise have seen is Never Sleep Again, where it's just like this, you know, 1-by-1 documentary of how each of these films in this franchise was made. And as a fan of the movies, it's really an interesting watch to have such like an honest, unfiltered take on the progression and unfortunately degression throughout the franchise, where it's like everybody's so excited talking about the first one and then they talk about the second one and they're like, oh, well, you know, and then you get to Dream Warriors and you find out like when you get to the fourth one that Rennie Harlan was basically just going off the cuff with no script. So he's like, let's just make badass kill scenes and we'll just figure it out from there. And it worked because it's a solid one, not as good as some of the others, but it was the most financially successful one at the time, maybe still is. And then they're like, let's not learn any lessons from that. Let's do the same thing with the fifth one. And that guy did not have as much success with it. Yeah. So it's a very fascinating watch if you're a fan of slasher films, but specifically Nightmare on Elm Street. And then in that same vein, my hidden gem pick would be a documentary called Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street. And this is about Mark Patton, who was the star of the second film. And for those that haven't seen it or aren't as into like the lore, I guess, of that movie, is it has since gained like this very cult following for having such a homoerotic type of flavor to it that was supposedly unintended. There's a bunch of different, you know, debates on that. The screenwriter said he intended it and to be subtext, but the director pushed all of it to the forefront. And so it's a fascinating movie, but it's about how who was somebody who was quite literally positioned to be like the next big teenage actor, you know, very handsome guy, but he was closeted at the time. And so you have a movie that pushes all that to the forefront, and it's about how just professionally and personally it just demolished him for years. So fascinating look at a movie that I don't think is one of the best ones, but is one of the more interesting ones to talk about in that franchise. So if you're a Nightmare fan, either of those avenues are good.
Yeah, I haven't seen Never Sleep Again in several years, so I got to add that one back to my list as well as Brian's. One that I always recommend when people come to me and say, "Okay, I love docs, I love scary stuff. Give me like the scariest documentary that you can tell me about." For me, it's The Nightmare, and The Nightmare is all about sleep paralysis.
Oh
And
yeah,
if people are unfamiliar with sleep paralysis, which is a real life phenomenon, this is where you wake up and for whatever reason you just can't move. So like you can see things, your eyes can dart around, but you're kind of like frozen in place. And this can you know take effect for anywhere from a few seconds to minutes. And some people have had very very bad cases where they not only are essentially paralyzed for several minutes, but they also claim to see things and hear things, and things are happening to them. And it gets into some conspiracy theories as well. But just to keep it on point, this documentary has reenactments that are absolutely terrifying. It does not feel like a documentary. It is truly, truly scary. I believe it's on Netflix in the United States. I'm not sure where else would be streaming abroad. But that one is, in my opinion, one of the scariest documentaries I've ever seen. And there's obviously a lot of great, true crime documentaries and serial killer documentaries and things too, which are interesting. But that one, just as a standalone, is terrifying. Another one, which is more educational than scary, is called Room 237. And this was from Rodney Asher years ago. I don't remember the year it came out. Maybe you guys can correct me on the date if you know. But this is all about the making of The Shining, and it gets into Kubrick and his real intentions, and interviewing various investigators that really analyze and break down this film and the hidden messages within it. And this was the first time for me, as somebody that's seen many many movies, of saying like, "Oh my God, this guy Kubrick is a genius, and he was making a movie within a movie within a movie." There's just so many layers to it that when you look at it, it's really hard to refute the purpose and intention that was made with The Shining. And I don't know if you guys want to get into that lore, but in short, and there's many different rabbit holes on this one. One of the biggest things with the making of The Shining is that it's Kubrick's admission, essentially, that he was the one that produced and filmed the first Apollo moon landing. And when you add up all these clues, it's pretty clear, and it's again very hard to refute. And for entertainment purposes only, very very fun to go down some of those rabbit holes. Others are very very dark. But it's just interesting that he was able to pull this off while making this standalone film work, and it's an adaptation from Stephen King. And then when you compare the book to the Shining movie, you're like, wait, that doesn't align, that doesn't align. So there's all these things where again, it's very clear that Kubrick had his hand in this, and it is a standalone film. And in fact, one of the only horror related gifts that my wife got me is a painting of the Stanley Hotel, which is where The Shining takes place. So for me, The Shining is one of the classic horror films that I think most people know. But if you've not seen Room 237, it is one of the most impactful documentaries you will see, especially if you're a horror fan. And Rodney Asher also went on to make other great conspiracy type docs, like he did one called Glitch in the Matrix a couple years ago, which was really cool. And it's all about, are we living in a simulation? What experiences do we have just in our everyday life that would kind of point in that direction? Obviously, it's a very hard thing for the scientific community to prove. And for the scope of this conversation, we don't have to go there. I think that's its own thing to get into all the conspiracy theories and the science behind it and whatnot. But Brian, Cody, have you guys seen these documentaries? What are your thoughts on Room 237 and The Nightmare?
I haven't seen either one of them, but I do
Oh my
have
God.
237 on my radar. Like I said, documentaries is something I don't dive into too much, but that is one where, I mean, The Shining, it's fascinating to me how decades later that film is only debates. Like nobody can agree on what that movie is totally trying to do, or what certain scenes and images mean, and whether this lines up to be this, what the ending is. And that's one of the best things about it and why it has stayed with such a longevity in horror conversations as a proven classic. So diving into it even more with something like that is fascinating to me. Kind of a tangent though. Have either of you guys, and Brian, you might have because you said you were at South by, have either of you been to the Alamo Draft House, South Lamar in Austin, where they've kind of branded it as The Shining?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that is very cool. So for those that haven't been, I mean, first of all, Alamo Draft House, hopefully this QR code thing doesn't destroy me saying this eventually, but it's one of the best theater chains you can go to. But the one specifically that I'm talking about, that location, they took one of their theaters, or they added a theater and took away some of the lobby, and it's all, the whole lobby now is like Shining themed, where they have like a graphic of the elevators opening up, and that theater's called Room 237. And if you're a Shining nut, you got to go.
Yeah.
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 And just to add to that, super quick, with Alamo Draft House, if people have not gone, this is a place where they wanted to make it beyond just what you get with the big chains. They want to make it a hangout spot, a place that has typically a bar and a restaurant type of configuration where you can go before the movie, so it's a natural dinner and movie place. You can also just order things from your seat, which ties back to the QR code stuff that Cody's talking about, because it's like you're not supposed to have your phones, and yet you're supposed to scan a code to, order a Kit Kat bar or whatever. But it's just a really cool venue. It is a full on entertainment venue. It is not just a theater complex, and it typically celebrates and champions indie films. And this was bought by one of the major studios, and they continue to kind of carry forward the spirit of it being an indie chain, as opposed to just putting all the big studio films on it. And the typical theater room only has, I'm going to say 40, 50 seats. This is not like a huge auditorium or anything like that. So it's a very intimate setting, but really cool for families, really cool for date night and going out with friends. And it started in Austin, Texas. So if you have one near you, definitely check it out. It is a great experience.
Yeah, absolutely. That my first experience with an Alamo was at that theater for South by. Yeah, it was great. It was really great because when I got to my movie that I wasn't supposed to see, and the reason why I wasn't supposed to see is because of so many issues. So I was pretty mad, actually. So I sit down and I'm like, this sucks so far. Oh my gosh, I'm at Alamo. I can order food right now. That's great. And the movie had already started, so at that point I didn't have to use a QR code. I could press the button and write it down and everything. So I had the real experience, and so it was very nice, for sure. But yeah, the whole thing's like Shining themed, and I was rushing to get to that screening, but as I'm walking through, I'm just like, whoa, this is awesome. This is so cool. I'll have to come back and look at this when I'm not in a rush. So yeah, good experience.
And when you say you weren't supposed to see it, was it because you were underage? It was rated R? Or
No.
what was the situation?
I was 5 minutes late to seeing I Love Boosters at the premiere, and it's all because of my Uber driver. I was so mad, and then I don't know Austin. This is my first time in Austin, and so I'm like, okay, what is everyone doing? I text Chuck. I'm like, what's everyone doing? They're like, we're at the Alamo. We're about to go see this. I'm like, I'm just going to come to you guys because I don't have another screening until later. Well, I didn't realize that scootering there was probably not the choice, but that's what I was doing. And so by the time I get there, I can't even get to the screening that they're going to go into. I'm waiting in line to maybe get in standby, and then they shout out a movie that I was going to see later that week. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go do this. And finally, like, sit down, and a bird pooped on me earlier that day. It was a trip. So I was just like, okay, I'm going to get some pretzel sticks and cheese and watch this movie because that's what I deserve.
Yeah, South by can be an endurance test in Austin. Like, you have to plan things to the T and still allow yourself a little bit of a frustration buffer that things are not going to go as planned. I had at least 2 or 3 times where, like, I would plan it out where it's like, unfortunately, the schedule this past year, too, was much more condensed than it was the first year. So, like, you literally have to get in the Uber the moment that the credits roll and get to your next film. Otherwise, you're just going to have 2 hours to do nothing. But if you get a chance to do Fantastic Fest is all at that theater. So you never leave that Alamo Draft House, and it's much more relaxed. But yeah, it was the Forbidden Fruits movie. I don't know if you saw that one, where I jumped out of a movie the moment I got there, and then my Uber driver was like 15, 20 minutes away and picked up my ride. And so I'm sitting there, I'm like,
Yeah.
You jerk. There is 25 people that are 5 minutes away from me. And so,
Yeah.
he got me there to where only by the grace of God did I make it into that movie before that thing started.
Jeez.
See, I thought, Brian, you were going to go into, sneaking into an R-rated movie as a minor or something, and I was going to share my experience. I'm just going to do it now. So, my buddy and I, when we were freshmen in high school, 14 years old, we snuck into the American Pie movie. So we bought a ticket for some PG thing, bought our candy and popcorn, go into American Pie, and then one of the workers, is walking up and down the aisles with a flashlight, shines it in her face. He's like, "You kids gotta go." And I had a whole candy box of Gobstoppers. I don't know if you remember those, because they don't even have them in the theaters anymore. So I went out in the lobby and just like threw it up in the air and watched it kind of rain down. I'm like, if you're kicking me out, I'm not just gonna sit out here and eat my candy here. I was gonna eat it in there, but now you got a mess on your hands. You gotta, But whatever. I was 14. They were just doing their job. So, so shout out to that guy wherever he is now. Hopefully he's not still in the AMC in St. Louis, but who knows? So as a wild card, so Brian, what topic do you want to discuss? Throw a curveball at us.
Yeah, I made a video the other day, and it was at the height of Obsession, so I was like, let me just ride this wave. But I mean, the height of Obsession is still there, which is amazing to say. But in terms of content, everyone's asking about sequels and prequels, and I also kind of like wanted to tail off of Weapons, because when Weapons came out, I was not on the boat of we need a sequel to Weapons or a prequel. I don't want to know about Aunt Gladys. That's what makes her scary. And so now, of course, we already know they're going to do it. But it was kind of just a video about like, do we really need sequels and prequels to horror films that do well just because they do well? Do we need it because of the money? Do we need it because we need the story? And then the irony there is, I go see Backrooms and I'm like, give me all the sequels, give me everything, because I know Kane's not finished with that story. So I'm kind of like going against my own question and by saying like, no, actually, I think Backrooms like warrants it. But with Obsession, when I was talking about Obsession, I was talking about the TV series idea, the anthology series that Curry has for The One Wish Willow, versus just a straight sequel or prequel to the story in Obsession. So, which I'm into as well. But yeah, I just would love to know your all's thoughts of, do we like? I just feel like every time a movie does well, Longlegs, Weapons, Obsession, Backrooms, the immediate thing is more. But at the same time, these same people are saying more original stories as well, less sequels.
Yeah, I have that frustration, and I've had it the entire time I've been on YouTube, where you have people that say that, and they scream from the rooftops, like, Hollywood doesn't have any original ideas anymore. There's no original movies. And I'm like, there are more original movies today than ever before. You just don't go see them.
Yeah.
You'll skip past an Obsession and a Backrooms and all these other things to go watch Fast and the Furious 27. So save me all that bullshit. But, it's kind of a thing to me where, I brought up Longlegs earlier. I don't see the vision for that. I don't understand why we're doing a sequel, prequel, whatever. That's just them saying, oh, this worked, let's do more. And I understand for the people that are writing the checks why that's their first inclination, is like, I see dollar signs, whether it's good or not, people are going to go see it. So whatever, let's try it. For me, it just comes down to like, is there a world built where there's more stories to tell? Wasn't as high on Backrooms as you guys, but there's potential there for that world. Like, they just scratched the surface on it. So for me, it's like, well, obviously there's more things to tell. You could have a more narratively driven version of that might even work better for me. The Obsession, direct sequel, prequel, no. There's nothing left to tell with those characters. I don't want to know what happens to Nikki afterwards. Like, I don't need any of that. But the whole thing of like, well, let's tell more stories about the One Wish Willow and different ways that these wishes can go wrong, whether it's a sequel or a TV series. It could not work out very well, but there's potential there. And at least when you do it that way, I don't think that bad sequel or bad TV series would at all tarnish Obsession. There's always a debate that people have where it's like, can a remake destroy the original? And I always say no, because if I go watch the Fog remake and it sucks, which it did, I'm never going to go back to the John Carpenter film and be like, I can't even enjoy this anymore.
Right.
But sequels, I do think have the potential to tarnish the original. Like you look at something like The Matrix. I don't know how you guys feel about those sequels, but I love the original.
Yeah.
Don't care so much for any of the sequels.
Yeah.
And every time I watch The Matrix, as great as it is, there's always a part of me that's like, but it leads to this.
Yeah.
And so that's where I tend to bump up against sequel ideas so much, where it's just like, please don't ruin this. Please don't screw it up. Don't give me a continuation of these characters or the lore here that screws up how well the first one did. Don't Breathe is a good example, where horror, thriller, whatever you want to call it, where a really solid original movie by Fede Alvarez, and then they do a sequel, they try to make the villain kind of heroic, and it's like, nope. I don't know why you tried to do that, but that doesn't work. And so we could pull out multiple examples. I wish Hollywood would learn more of the lesson of just triple down on original ideas. I forget who it was. It might have been Sean Baker or somebody at the Oscars a year or two ago that said, stop making so many $200 million movies and make 20 $10 million movies. That's what I kind of would want to see the trend. Like, look at Obsession and Backroom success and don't automatically think, how can we turn this into a shared universe or a sequel thing? And just say, what other hungry filmmakers out there with a cool original idea can we give some money to? That's what I would like to see happen. So,
Yeah, and Jason Blum has said very similar things. Give me $30 million, I'll make 10 $3 million movies, right? And they'll be, pretty good. So we'll see. But to your point, I think until audiences really push back by like not buying tickets to the bad sequels, the big studios are going to keep making them, because from an analytics perspective, they're like, oh, we made this much money on the first one, so we're probably going to make this much on the second one. And to watch the second or third, especially if you're introducing, new generations to it or whatever it is, they have to go back and watch the original. So it breathes new life into the IP and into the, thing that they're hoping becomes this bigger franchise, right? And you see even groups like A24, doing this now with Talk to Me, right? You're going to have a sequel to Talk to Me that may very well be a great movie, following up to the original. But for distributors and studios, my group included with Utopia, sometimes with intellectual property, like that's the only way to kind of figure out what that value really looks like, is turn it into an adaptation, a sequel, a prequel, whatever. And sometimes it works out, and sometimes you get, Insidious 5, or whatever, and we'll see. Right. And I think we're all excited about like Evil Dead, right, coming out later this year, right? That's a sequel. I think we're excited about Mike Flanagan's version of The Exorcist, right? And that'll probably be a standalone movie as opposed to just like an adaptation, even though he said he's very much influenced by Exorcist 3. So I think sometimes these sequels and prequels and adaptations, they're great, but it's really just up to the audience first to hold the studios accountable and say, hey, this is dog shit, or, this is great, give me more of that. And occasionally, even getting out of horror, you look at like the Mission Impossible franchise, like each one has kind of gotten better in a weird way, going back to J.J. Abrams with Mission Impossible 3, 1 and 2 are just kind of like, okay, cool. He accepts the mission, he runs around, and he somehow survives. But then 3, it's like, it's intense. I remember seeing that the first time and just feeling like I couldn't blink, I couldn't breathe. It was great. And then you get more and you're like, okay, fine. And then it's like, oh, by the way, Tom Cruise is doing a lot of these stunts himself. Oh, by the way, he shatters both of his legs in the scene and they still finish the movie. So sometimes it's great, but you got to push the envelope. Cody, what topic do you want to talk about?
Well, we kind of covered it. I was going to say, what lessons do we want them to learn from Obsession and Backrooms? We kind of intertwined it all.
Sure. Deal. Well, and look, I'm going to share this. I don't want to spoil, Obsession by any means. I would say there's definitely a lot of hype for it. What I shared with some of my colleagues is I haven't felt this much hype for a movie probably in 6 or 7 years, probably since Hereditary, to be honest. And because of that, I was slightly disappointed in what I saw. But it was only because I was wanting more scares and to be truly terrified. However, many of the scenes and topics and aspects of that movie stuck with me throughout, where I'm like, I got to talk to somebody about this. I feel like I need to have like a therapy session just to like really get into it. And obviously you can only do that with people that see the movie. So it's definitely a moment for indie film. It's a moment for the horror industry. It is absolutely worth seeing. but sometimes don't, have these preconceived notions and expectations go in, because it can hurt, and that's why I know a lot of us don't necessarily, watch the trailers 50 times, because then you're kind of like, you feel like you've already seen the movie. And
Yeah.
then when you get the thing, it's not that scary, or it's not that funny, or whatever it is. So just go see it, celebrate it. It's a great film.
Yeah.
Do you guys find it easy to have that discipline to not watch trailers? I don't know if you're that psycho about it as I am. Like, I don't watch anything, especially with horror. There's a few exceptions. Like, I had to watch the first little teaser for Resident Evil or something that I'm just like really chomping at the bit for. But for the most part, I try to walk into everything blind. Do you find that that's easy to do, or is it just like miserable trying to avoid all that?
Yeah, I think I have specific rules set when it comes to trailers. One of them is simply, if it's in the theater, I'll watch it unless it's just something that I don't want to know a single thing about. That is kind of rare for me, though, I will say. So I don't get on YouTube every week and say, okay, what's the trailers that came out last week? Let's watch them all. Write down what I'm excited for. It really is. I really hope for word of mouth to get me into the movies that I should be excited for. But if it's something that I just like, for instance, Backrooms, if it's for something that I'm truly a fan of and can kind of ramble on for, an hour about, then yeah, I'm going to like a good example would be Clayface. I'm a massive Batman the Animated Series fan and
Same.
collector. And so, yeah, I want to see what they pulled off there. And so I'll watch everything for that, just because I'm eager to be fed that. But no, not everything. But I don't know. I think I've also I think it is a discipline. I think going into a movie without expectations is so necessary. And so through the years, I've done my best to help do that. It doesn't mean that I'm successful every single time. But yeah, I see a lot of, this wasn't what I expected, so it's bad. And I don't think that's their fault. I think that's kind of a personal issue if you just go in fully expecting something. So yeah, I think like judging it on what it is and not what you hoped for it to be is kind of the move there. Is what I would tell everyone.
Yeah. For me, I love watching the trailers, but I do agree that sometimes it goes overboard. Like, you look at, the upcoming Spielberg movie that I've talked
Yep.
a lot about, Disclosure Day. They have like 5 trailers, and the most recent one is basically a trailer of Spielberg saying like, "Hey guys, like, go see it, and like, by the way, it's all true, and like,
Yeah.
aliens are here, and like, check out my movie," and like, that's an interesting play, because like, obviously there's going to be a lot of people going just because it is Spielberg and it's a follow up to, many of his other great films. But, there's a certain point where, if you have 2, 3, 5 different trailers, it's like, how much of the movie have you already now, kind of seen? And it's hard to then see that elevated experientially when you finally do see it in theaters. I remember, just to get outside of horror for a second, one of my favorite movies of all time is called Lord of War, and it has Nicolas Cage. And I still, when I tell people about it, and they're like, "I've never seen it, I don't know what it is," I show them the trailer. The trailer sucks. The trailer is just not good. It doesn't reflect what this is at all, you know? And that was a movie, somehow it was like a random summer. I don't know what year it came out, but it was one of the few movies that I did walk in blind, and I was just blown away, So I think every once in a while you just have to pick something and go, don't let the poster and the trailer and the reviews and things like that kind of sway you,
Yeah.
and if you emotionally or just out of sheer boredom and entertainment want to see something, just watch it, you know?
Yeah.
So that's my view on it.
I've gotten
If you
very addicted to walking in blind from my film festival experiences, because most of them, I have no idea what this movie is. Like, you might have like a picture, you might have like a little tiny little elevator pitch or whatever, but some of my most cherished movie experiences the last number of years is something where I walk in like, we'll see what this is. Last year at South by Southwest, this isn't a horror film, but there was a movie called The Rivals of Amziah King that's coming out this August with Matthew McConaughey. And I can't tell you how little interest I had in this. I walked in and the picture just looked like the Free State of Jones, Matthew McConaughey, where it's like, oh, it's a period piece or something. I don't know. And I loved that movie so much. It was my number one movie I saw last year. And I don't think, like, the trailer is solid, but you watch the trailer that they have out for it now. And if had I watched that, I know I wouldn't have had the same experience because my expectations were just so non-existent. And then that movie just takes you on this wild, unexpected ride. You can't recreate that. Once you have a pre-established notion, you just can't get that back.
All right. Well, getting outside of sequels and trailers and backrooms and Obsession, if you guys could go back in time to either fix or just totally do over an existing horror film that the general audience would know about, which one would you pick and why? Tell us what's wrong with it. Let's have some fun.
Yeah, mine's pretty easy. We don't have to linger too long on mine, I think. But I just watched Him, which is not an old movie. It's maybe 2 years old. But it's the Marlon Wayans, Jordan Peele produced Him, and I think everyone kind of agrees that it's just maybe too random. I said it was like a really nice looking music video. It was really cool to watch, to look at. But there's something there. And I said the same thing about Five Nights at Freddy's movies is, they're a mess, but there's something about it that I'm interested in. And I'm really interested in like the last 10 minutes of this movie and a few moments throughout that just get super weird. And I love weird. And so I think if we could do a rewrite and maybe if not focus so much, I don't know, like maybe it's the setting, maybe it's the setting of the sports, maybe it's just sports in general.
Yeah, what is the premise of Him for
basically
for the audience
Marlon
listening?
Wayans is like Michael Jordan, and I know that's a different sport, but this is where I'm going.
This is a football movie, right?
It's a football movie, and Marlon Wayans is the GOAT. I think literally that's his nickname in this world. And so essentially as he's getting older, of course, retirement probably should happen. And so there's this kid who looks like he could be the next GOAT. And so Marlon Wayans invites him to kind of train basically. But the training gets more and more, I mean, it's kind of a nice psychological situation happening as well. And the training just gets messed up. And like I said, there's some cool moments. There's some weird moments of like, how is he the GOAT this entire time in his 40s and after like busting both of his knees, and like how is he still this good? And that wasn't explored enough for me. And then you get, oh no, what's her name? You get Julia Fox, being Julia Fox in there, and that's super weird. But yeah, it's unfortunate. And of course, Jordan Peele's name is attached to it, so everyone's like, Jordan Peele, he's got to stop making movies. And then, because people just don't know what producers mean or directors and exec produce. And so that's a whole mess as well. So I think just doing a redo for that would be fun. And I'll also just throw out, Five Nights at Freddy's as well. I'm not a fan of that franchise. I didn't play anything. I'm not well versed at all. But there's something to these animatronics that I'm like, I want to explore more of. And I think if we did a redo for that, I mean, but they're going to keep making those though. Those make money. So I don't think that's happening.
Did you ever see the Nicolas Cage animatronics horror film?
Yeah.
I'm blanking on the name.
Something
Help me
Wonderland, Willy's Wonderland.
Yeah, exactly. Willy's Wonderland. So the quick backstory of this that I think you guys will appreciate and our audience will appreciate. So there's a different pay scale for actors when they have a certain number of lines and screen time and things like that. And so they basically wrote this character to have no lines at all. And they're like, hey, Nicholas, can you come and play this character? And he's going to be mute and enter this space and encounter these animatronic things similar, to Five Nights at Freddy's. And from an entertainment standpoint, it works. It's not very scary, but it is a very creative film, and it's hard to pull off a movie with very little dialogue. But they did. Cody, how about you? What would be your choices for films that you'd want to fix? and why?
Well, I wanted to comment on Brian's picks really quick. So
Yeah.
yeah, him. I saw a press screening for that right before. I think it was Fantastic Fest last year, and that is one where, as you said, there's something there because it's so visually intoxicating. Like it's such a cool visual experience. And I think Marlon Wayans gives a really good performance that you don't expect from him
Yeah.
because you typically know him as comedy. And this is like a very like psychologically tormenting type role. But it's such a surface level message first type film where I've even told people like you can watch the trailer and get the entire point of the movie.
Yeah.
Like don't sell your soul for fame. And it's like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
And then the next 90 minutes, it's like, do you have anything else? Like that's all you're saying over and over. See, that was a frustration. And Five Nights at Freddy's, yeah, like I understand why people are so enamored with them. Like the lore, the idea of it is intoxicating, but those movies just fail so spectacularly at being an on-ramp for new fans. It's like it's just for people who are already there, which is very frustrating. And the conversation surrounding them as somebody that covers them is even more frustrating because the pre-established fans, at least a loud chunk of them, not all of them, are fine with that. They're like, whatever, if you're not already part of our group, then whatever, we don't need you. And it's frustrating where you're like, I want to though. I want to be in the group. I want to be in the club. This is cool, but you're not giving me anything. You're just giving Easter eggs that I don't recognize. So yeah, I had hoped the second film was going to rectify some of that because that was the common criticism, and for whatever reason they just tripled down. And even Blumhouse with their like social media tripled down because all they were doing was like, not so subtly giving the middle finger to the critic scores and stuff. And it's like, okay, well, whatever.
Right.
My pick for a film that I always felt like had a lot more potential is The Burning. So this is a camp slasher from the 80s, which, there were a dime a dozen back then. You had Friday the 13th that obviously took off, become one of the most prolific ones, and then Sleepaway Camp. And the Burning has a really cool vibe about it. It's got one of the best kill sequences of all time with the raft kill scene. And a couple of entertaining characters with some of these like up and coming actors. You had like Jason Alexander in there and a couple people that ended up being in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. But that's a movie that never took off. It never got a sequel. It doesn't really have anywhere near the reputation as even Sleepaway Camp, which is not anywhere near Friday the 13th, in my opinion, as far as widespread appeal. And I think a lot of that had to do with the way that they executed the killer, where you have Cropsey and the way that they visualized him and the third act payoff when he's eventually revealed. And so that's one that I've always gone back to. And I'm like, man, there's so much potential here. This could have been another one of those really fun 80s franchises, but they just missed the mark with the most important part, which is having a killer that you can't wait to see again.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Nice.
All right. Well, to add on to that, the film, and it became a franchise, taking it full circle, that I struggle with the most as a film that a lot of people consider good, and it is entertaining. It's called The Purge, and obviously The Purge has been around for many years. The premise being that there's one day in which there's no laws and you can kind of do whatever you want, and so most people just kind of go around and take what they want and unalive the people that they want to take care of. And obviously, you follow people that kind of get caught up in this chaos, right? For whatever reason, they didn't flee town, they didn't go, into the woods or some rural community or a bunker somewhere. They're just in the line of fire, or they're trying to just hold it down in their house, and you have a home invasion situation, everything else. I just felt like there were more opportunities to make it scary as opposed to just graphically violent and just, how do you get out of this situation? How can we make a explosion happen here or there? It felt more like an action film with some drama and pseudo character development as opposed to legitimate horror. And I know that they weren't necessarily trying to go for straight horror, but there were so many opportunities where you could make that terrifying, conceptually. And I just felt like no part of the franchise, including the original, turned that corner. How do you guys feel about The Purge?
Yeah, I feel like the first one was a pretty big missed opportunity, but I feel like Blumhouse heard that and immediately pivoted on the second one. I really enjoyed the two films with Frank Grillo in them. So The Purge Anarchy and The Purge Election Year, I dig those quite a bit. The first one, Ethan Hawke was what really brought me in, and it's a great concept. Like it's a great little elevator pitch. But the thing that they didn't have the foresight for with that one is like, you made this great idea and then you boxed us into this house. And all I'm thinking
Right.
the entire time is what's going on outside these walls. And then you get to the second film and they're like, okay, here you go. So, I would like a more horror centric version. And in fact, I was in LA last year for Monsterpalooza, and my buddy that I was staying with, we were like just kind of throwing different ideas out there for movies and things like that. He was going to end up having a meeting with Blumhouse, and so we were really sticking to like Blumhouse type of franchises. And I was thinking how cool it would be to have a movie where, I don't know if you guys ever played the game Manhunt from like the PS2 era, but something along those lines where you have this prison and the warden is a psycho, where he ends up locking everybody up that night or lets everybody out that night, trying to film like a snuff film where you have the guards and you have the inmates and everything trying to survive, and your main character is trying to, by the end of it, trying to expose what's going on. And he finally gets out of the prison, and then the horns go off, and it was a Purge sequel that you didn't know was a Purge sequel. And so everything that happened that night now is exonerated. Something like that, where you like almost have like a Split with M. Night, where you don't even realize you're watching a movie in a shared universe until the end. There's potential to do something like that where they can push it a little further, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're ever going to do that, but those two movies I like. The first Purge, and what was the other one? I don't know what the last one was called. I didn't care for those at all.
Bryan, what were your thoughts on that franchise?
I like the first one, but that's because I was expecting like, home invasion type stuff. And I wrote it down just because once the names hit, I need to make sure I write it down or I'll be blanking. But I think Funny Games is just like such a great example of how insane home invasion can be. The Strangers as well, but Funny Games is more like diabolical. So that's kind of like what I was expecting. But I also love Ethan Hawke as well, so that's why I was super drawn into it. I don't know. I agree. I think it kind of turns into just like, it seems more like an action movie than a horror movie at times. But that being said, yes, I absolutely want to get outside of that house. I don't think every Purge needed to be a home invasion type of situation. But yeah, I don't know. I guess the political, I mean, it makes sense, right? It is such a politically based decision to do this. And of course, the people who are lower on the spectrum of being of importance are the ones who are going to be killed quite easily. But I don't know if I'd go the political route. That's probably my thing, which of course it very much did. It's in some of the titles, so I think maybe that's the only thing that I would do, is maybe not go the whole political route. Which, again, I understand. It's just maybe just, yeah. I mean, it's such a fun, and I say that hesitantly, fun concept. That I do not want to be a part of, but yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing some more stories. That I don't know. I don't think they need to be massive stories. I think they can be singular locations, just on a bigger scale. The jail idea, absolutely. Yeah, what a bummer to go through all of that, and it's like, surprise, it's all legal. Get back in your cell.
Yeah, I mean, and as you're saying that, I'm thinking about like A Quiet Place, right? Where like the first film obviously takes place in predominantly rural area, and you're on like a farm and that kind of thing, and then it zooms out for the sequels to show you what's happening in the big cities, what's happening in these other places, and is this a global thing? Is it localized? What's the source? So yeah, I mean, I think those are good opportunities to kind of expand on a successful initial film, right? And that was another one that at its time was one of the most successful films made from a financial perspective. And fans obviously were clamoring for more, and so we'll see what the next one has in store. So just a reminder as we kind of wrap today's conversation to like and subscribe for Fear Assembly. We have a Patreon channel where you get early access to all these conversations, as well as other unique interactive opportunities and experiences. We'll get into that more over time. And we'll also be dropping these on all the free pods everywhere that you can catch them, Apple Pod, Spotify, etc. So be sure to like and subscribe for more, and comment and let us know what you want us to talk about, because I think the whole point of this is to build community, right? And we're fans just like you. So thank you for your support. Are there any other horror films, Cody, that you want to recommend before we wrap today?
One of my go-tos that, again, I never can quite get my thumb on the pulse of whether this is a well-known film or a hidden gem. I think over time it's starting to bridge the gap, is Frailty. Talking about
Mhm.
psychological horror especially. That is one that I always feel like is massively underrated. I think it's one of the best directed horror films of all time from the late great Bill Paxton. It's a movie that knows when to reserve what they show you and is all the more effective for it. I mean, it's literally a story about a father who's forcing his two sons to be complicit in these horrific murders, and they never show you any like gore, but they just show you the reactions on these kids' faces and the difference in their reaction. And so that's one that I really don't even want to tell people what it's about. I don't even want to prime you by letting you know. It's just a wild ride that is amazing. It's one of my favorites of all time.
Yeah. Yeah, that one's great. That's my story with horror is I got into it later in life, but Frailty was one of those that kind of like slipped through the cracks. I think I even watched it on VHS. I got it from my rental
Mm.
store on VHS with my friends, and it's just one of those like I think I'm only saying this because of maybe the time it came out, but like I remember watching that and I think Seven around the same time, and both
Mhm.
just being like, oh my gosh, these I didn't see this going here at all, and just loving it. So yeah, that's a great one. I have two real quick. One is just I feel like it didn't get enough love because the sequel, so this is a third movie in a franchise, but the sequel is just it's a nice little story, but it's just not great, and the acting's terrible. But Branagh, obsessed with the Poirot stories. Most famously, the first one is Murder on the Orient Express. But this one is absolutely leaning more into the horror genre, and feels that way too. And I kind of put it off just because Death on the Nile wasn't really that great as much as I love Branagh. So I didn't watch it until I owned it, and then I watched it, and of course I was just like, this should have been the sequel. I think people would have been on board, and just like Knives Out, I think Branagh could have just been making these for the rest of his life, which I think what's his face needs to do for Knives Out, Ryan Johnson. And so yeah, throwing out A Haunting in Venice, it's a great mystery, great story, but there's some great horror vibes to it as well. And then I was thinking about Obsession and kind of The Monkey's Paw, and I think The Box is a great not follow up, and it's definitely not a
Mhm.
strong movie at all, compared to the fact that Richard Kelly is the director who did Donnie Darko, and Donnie Darko is just so massive,
Mhm.
in scale, but also in just like excellence for a first time director, that the fact that this is one of the follow ups is it's unfortunate. I think it's kind of more of a studio reason. But the whole idea is someone shows up at their house and they say, press this red button and you get $1 million. The problem is that someone is going to die. And that's kind of
Mhm.
it. That's kind of like the basis of that decision. And so it deals with James Marsden and Cameron Diaz, who I believe are a married couple. It deals with them figuring that out. Because yeah, it's a good deal, but then you start thinking about, well, who could it be? And so yeah, it's
Mhm.
it's fun, but I because we were talking about Obsession, I figured, well, what's another kind of somewhat linear, or not linear, but somewhat I don't know the word I'm looking for, but a story that is similar in terms of
Yeah.
making choices.
Definitely in a similar vein. Yeah, I think that the box is all about, risk and reward, right? And for most people, if they're happy and content with where they are in life, they have no need to hit the button.
Yeah,
All the money in the world sounds great, but if it comes at a steep cost, especially a wild card of who that sacrifice might be,
yeah,
it's just not worth it. And that's what that story really investigates, and it's similar even to, great drama films and other movies that just kind of question, what is the value of relationships? What is the value of, money to certain people? And I think it's circumstantial and a question that maybe the answer is different depending on where you're at in life. Right.
Totally.
The ones that I'll recommend as we wrap up here, one is called Let the Right One In. This is a classic vampire film. It is in foreign language, but it is very intense. I believe I've spoken about it on a prior episode, but for people that really want to get into the horror genre, I know for me, this helped me turn a corner to understand, okay, this can be done in an artful way. It can be terrifying. It can be psychological. It can be a great story with great characters. And the fact that it was foreign language actually elevated it for me because it forced me to focus on what was happening, focus on all the dialogue, and obviously the action, plays itself out. So I don't want to give away too much, but one of the great vampire movies in my opinion, since we've spoken about all these psychological horror films. But to end on another great psychological horror film that I love, it's called Swallow. This one was filmed in upstate New York. Along the river, so it's got a lot of beautiful scenery and great cinematography and shots in it. But this is a story about a woman who's in a pretty confined relationship where she's going through a lot of torment, a lot of things that she's not necessarily sharing with those around her, and for some reason she just starts eating, you know, non-food items, right? And she keeps doing it and becomes kind of like addicted to it, and she doesn't know why she's doing it. Other people start to notice, like, hey, what happened to my, you know that like key, like you just ate the key to my like back door, like what's going on? So as she's eating these random objects, it's slowly revealing this like bigger story around why she's psychologically tormented, where she's trying to get to, all the negative things that are happening in her world. And this was again a very powerful film, not very well known. So if you love psychological horror and you like to see great cinematography, check out Swallow. I believe this one is streaming as well, but I'm not sure. It might be on Hulu if I'm not mistaken. So
Cool.
those are all the recommendations. Any other call outs that you guys have or recent reviews that you want to point people to on your channels before we wrap?
Just don't watch the American version of Let the Right One In.
Oh, I highly disagree.
Oh, really?
I highly
Okay,
disagree.
great. Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
Wait,
So,
wait,
granted, I saw Matt Reeves' version first. So, obviously, which one you see first, I think, does dictate sometimes which one you kind of resonate more with. But besides the fact that Matt Reeves made it and who is one of the best filmmakers of our time, in my
Totally.
opinion, what I really appreciate about the American version as just a contrast to where I think both movies can stand on their own and have their own merit is that Let Me In, I think, focuses a little bit more on just like the purity and the innocence of like childhood love, whereas Let the Right One In, there's very much like this very psychological, dark, like grooming aspect to it. I mean, there's one single shot in Let the Right One In when someone's changing in a bathroom that is not in Let Me In that changes the entire dynamic of what's going on. And I think it makes that film a lot more fucked up. Where Let Me In, what I like about it is, you think about when you're an adult and how tainted sometimes what we experience or what we think of love is. You get all these other motivations, lust, all these other things that come into it. And with Let Me In, with these two kids and Chloe Grace Moretz and Cody Smith McPhee, is their bond is, it feels like that pure childhood love of just like, this is somebody that makes me feel like I belong in this world. You know what I mean? So I really like that difference. I understand that it's more Americanized, it's softer,
sure.
as oftentimes American remakes are. And Richard Jenkins, I think, is incredible in that movie too. But yeah, so respectfully disagree.
No, that's great. and honestly, like hearing that from you, I'm like, hey, I need to revisit it then because I totally like that for sure. That same kind of relationship happens very briefly in a movie called Hannah, with Saoirse Ronan, and I love that. I really do. So now I need to revisit Let Me In.
Very cool.
Excellent. Well, hopefully you have some great recommendations that you can check out at home and in theaters, and we'll see you again in a couple days here. So thank you for your support, and we'll talk soon.
Bye.